So I kind of just realized I've been making these, and I could have just filmed it all straight all the way through, and then I could just bit it up into pieces. Just in that, so it's kind of embarrassing on me because I've already filmed like 10 of these. But I just realized that. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all of the cities based in the world. So on the continent, we're going to go into every single city, what it's about. Just very light stuff, not anything crazy. Because like I said, I want you to put your character into the story, in-depthing your character with their own backstories, their own ties, things, you know, we can all work on and all dive into together in the game. Words. So let's go ahead and start this off. We're going to go from the East Coast to the West Coast. The West Coast is kind of the meat. So we'll start off and we'll work our way outwards. So the first... Oh, there goes the phone. So the first thing on the West Coast, we have Sleeper's Peak and the Caliber Mountains. Taco Bell. On Sleeper's Peak, there is a mysterious dungeon there, so we're not going to talk about it as the highest point elevation-wise, the highest peak of the mountain on the continent. Going south on that East Coast, because like I said prior, I think I already explained this, for this continent, the equator is the center, so it goes vertically down the center. So on the East Coast, you can get much more colder environments. On the West Coast, you can get much more warmer environments, less snow, more forest, more swamps. Where on the East Coast, you're going to have a lot of mountains, you're going to have a lot of cold, you're going to have a lot of ice. And on top of this mountain, there is a monk monastery of warrior monks who are here keepers of the peace. They are based on Mount Caliburn, which is kind of like the mountains. But this is a gigantic monastery that is home to hundreds of monks. All are very powerful in depth in their own ways. And around the monastery, a lot of refugees from the wastelands of Erendite, which we'll go into that shortly, all came here during the Great War of the continent and just built a village around said monastery because the monks kind of would just protect them and not ask for anything in return because their main concern was just protecting their monastery, but they're also going to help others who are in need. So they're just going to provide protection for them, and they're just going to bring them into their family, not necessarily monastery. They're not going to bring them there, but they're going to protect them. They're going to help them get food set up. So they've kind of made their own little faux nation there. Now this is engulfing the central and the southeast coast, by the way. This is Sleeper's Peak, and Mount Caliburn is that entire chunk. So in terms of, we're talking America, we're talking Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, you know, North South Carolina. It's a big chunk of area. Louisiana. Now going north, kind of in your northeast, it is a very large forest called the Wyndon Woods. In this is the village of Tumnus, which is where, if you are a satyr, you're going to be from. In this, there are a couple dungeons, you know, in case, you know, y'all go a little peek around. But overall, this does have its own stories that I would like you all to experience yourselves. But the village of Tumnus, very peaceful, very secluded. They kind of just hang out. They vibe. They're self-sufficient. They don't really talk to many people, so they're again very seclusive. Now we're getting into kind of in the first like meaty part of this. Now moving in along the northern border, going into kind of like the north central. Here in the northern central, and pretty much engulfing most of that north central, we have the kingdom of Corisius. Corisius, that is your big bad people. That is your empire. This is a gigantic chunk of walled-in land in segments, almost Attack on Titan like, where they have the three walls and the inner walls. Like, this is a place that is intense. It is evil. It is led by King Daira, who is the general of the former nation of Clarent, which he military coup and seized to create his own nation. Now, this nation is trying to actively wage war again. Kind of going in, so way back into the, kind of going into the kind of like late lore, because we are at Corisius. I forgot how much like breath talking takes. So now going into the Great War of the continent. Now that's where we get into kind of like the grit of the story. So originally it was a battle of the four nations. Now the four nations were not Caliburn. Caliburn formed afterwards. The nations were Corisius, Sacase, Galatine, and Erendite. Now, during the war, everyone was kind of picking sides and choosing. Clarent was like the good guys. They're like, hey guys, we gotta stop doing this. We know we're the most powerful, so let's try to work this out. Let's try to be peaceful. And eventually, the people of Clarent kind of were just like, this is ridiculous. So the king's like, all right, I'll raise a military. So one of his advisors was like, I'll run the military. More lore we'll dive into during the story, but essentially the general realized that he could seize the kingdom and take it for himself, so he does. And then all the other three nations, Sacaeus, Galatine, and Erendite, all team up against them. Unfortunately, Erendite, which is in the center of the continent, was the battlefield in which this battle was waged. So everything was wasteland, everything was ruined. There are no survivors of this nation. It is a dead nation. It is a ruined Badlands. And that's how they kind of all got to Caliburn. So just to review so far, because there's been kind of a lot. So far, we have gone through Caliburn and Sleeper's Peak. We've gone for the Wendon Woods and the Village of Tumnus. We've gone for the backstory of Erendite, as well as Corisius. Now, in between the wastelands of Erendite and Caliburn, there is a mysterious lake that no one really talks about. No one really goes there, but I'm sure we'll figure it out along the campaign. No one lives there, but kind of just to help you get like a view of the layout of what we're talking. So now, below the wastelands of Erendite, we have the Badlands. The Badlands and the City of Dread. That is just, again, people profiting. It is a bunch of bandits. It is criminals. It is your Mos Eisley of the area, because it is all the people all the refugees who turned the crime, just all the bounty hunters, all the bandits, the criminals, the pirates. They're all hanging out there. They're doing their own thing. It's kind of a lawless city, but it's a very loose government created by the bad guys. Now, once again, we're now kind of passing current in terms of America. The Badlands and Erendite, that's kind of your Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, like your very center of the nation. Where Corisius was kind of like your Michigans, your Wisconsins, moving across your North Dakotas, your South Dakotas. Now, we're kind of like, now that we're kind of moving into that West Coast, we're kind of out of the central states. At the very bottom, at the south of the west side, going inwards, we first have the Dry Marsh. Now, this is a big old swamp. We're in Florida now. In this, there's Stage Village. Here's a swamp village. It's kind of a bayou village. They're all on floating islands. This, again, it's just a very simple village. Nothing really crazy. Their main exports is, of course, anything, bayou-related, all that fun stuff. Shrimp catching, all that Louisiana, Florida-style bayou stuff. I'm not really going into more detail. We can kind of explain, of course, as well. You also have your little magic there. You got your voodoo and stuff like that. You got a lot of your necromancy there as well. So now we've kind of worked our way pretty decently into this chunk. So now we are officially into the Great Forest and going downwards into the Garden of Galatine. Now this is the meat. Like if Corisius was the bacon on the burger, this is the patty, the cheese, everything else. Take a deep breath to finish this one out in a timely manner. Okay, so we're going to go into the Guardian Lands of Galatine first. Now, this is the Guardian Lands of Galatine is a nation on the the southwest. So it is like kind of where San Diego is, kind of that area. It is a peninsula, so they are sticking out there kind of in a Florida-style way. And there is a wall. They have walled themselves in entirely. They are entirely secluded and self-sufficient. They have no contact with the outside world ever since the Great War. Because after they had to team up everybody and take on Corisius, they said, we're not taking any risk anymore. We're building a great wall. We're going Trump style. And we're going to keep everybody out and keep us in. We got ocean to our back. We can escape if we need to. They don't have an international port, though. We'll go into ports later. But they do have a port, but it's kind of just for themselves. Fishing, stuff like that. Now, the Garden Land of Galatine is entirely self-sufficient in terms of climate as well as terrain. You're looking at kind of like, your Florida. You're looking at swamps. You're looking at large greenlands. Not really major dense forest that's kind of outside the walls. But you're looking at a lot of marshes, a lot of dry lands, just a lot of green fields, pastures, stuff like that. There is a very large city. It is very bustling. Their king just kind of hangs out in there. They're really self-sufficient. They have no political structure. Just he's the king. He leads. They also have a lot of farmlands as well. There is a couple of dungeons as well as other cavern type areas that we will go into when we get there in the campaign. Spies him. All right. Now, right outside the walls of Galentine, because there are no official gates to Galentine, there is a bunch of holes in the wall that they use to shoot arrows out. This is not a wall that you can get out of, besides a very few hatches, doors like that, like little human-sized doors. Like, there is no gates. You cannot bring a lot of things in here. There's no way a horse gets out of those doors. Well, maybe a centaur. They're kind of a little more flexible. There is a small village right outside the walls of Galentine because there is the Great Marketplace. Now, that is your shopping plaza. That is where you're going to get everything that you might think you need to find. That's where you get your magical items. That's where you'll get your supplies, anything. This is a illegal or legal. This is a third party, just like Bandit Society, that kind of just decided to build here. Now, air. Finally, we are going to engulf on the entire west, north, central chunk of the map. That is the Great Forest and the hidden city of Sakase. Now, Sakase, that is way deep in the forest. The only way to get to Sakase is through a very protected and through the dense forest is a highway. Now, you can take your wagons in, you can take your wagons out. You're going to go through multiple checkpoints, all that stuff. You're also going to face the challenges of the forest, all the bandits that hide along the wall. Once you go on the first, you start the highway, you'll run into the village of Grail. You can obviously tell what it's named after. Now, the village of Grail, there are a lot of plot points there. It's kind of like your starter village. It's kind of where we're going to start the campaign as well. In terms of the village of Grail, it is a very humble village. You know, you got your inns, you got your marketplaces, you got your taverns. It's kind of a checkpoint town, so they're kind of there existing on off of travelers. Like, their main income is people coming and leaving. The compression sure isn't helping. And in this, there's a couple characters that are pretty important that you'll meet along the way, so I really can't go into too many details, but they're pretty important. Now, scattered throughout the forest, there are many different villages to kind of round out those species. There's a lot of dungeons and caverns, kind of where those goblins will come from, or anything of the sorts. Or, of course, if you're like a minotaur or anything like that. There also is your gnome village. There is your Morgarian Plains. That is where you were from if you were a centaur, if you decided to go that route. There's also small villages spread throughout, so if you want to be a very honest person, or maybe be that gnome or a fairy, you know, you will be from one of these many scattered small villages. And those small villages don't have much detail outside of things that I can't really go into because it's kind of spoiler warnings. So you're gonna have a lot of creativity depending on how much you really want to do. Obviously, with all your storylines and all that stuff like that, unless it's directly impacting the plot line that it's the story. Within reason, I won't be able to fully edit, but I'm able to tie a lot of this stuff into the campaign to really help us all connect our characters as one. Because of them, we're also going to have a lot of chances in the campaign. There's going to be a lot of fights, but there's also not going to be a lot of chances. I'm not going to be as bloodthirsty as before. I know I could be a little crazy in terms of killing off characters, but not today. Not this time, at least. Maybe. Well, and now finally going into the hidden coastal city of Sakase. That is your hub. That is your international port. That is your way in and out. Now, the hidden coastal city of Sakase. This is like kind of where Seattle's at. This is your northern west point. It is a very large city. It's your largest city in the continent, outside of maybe Crazies just because of the walls. But in terms of population, density, and freedom to move around, it is your biggest city. A couple fun facts about it. It is a patriarchy, so it does have a queen, as well as a very noble knight system, very standard militaristic system, but you'll meet a lot of characters with that. But again, it does have that matriarchy. The canon enemy came out there, the patriarchy. Matriarchy. Also, they are the only international port, so they are the hub. That's where you get your out. That's where you get your imports, your exports, your Easter egg, all the stuff from past campaigns, any stuff like that you want to look into, you want to investigate, you want to figure out what's going on in different countries, different campaigns, stuff like that. This is where you're gonna find out, or where they exactly lie in the universe, the Tristan cinematic universe, one could say. Now, this also has a very dense city, as well as villages scattered throughout it. So you're going to have a lot of things. I will add as well, a very important thing about the hidden coastal city of Skates and kind of throughout the nations, racism. A new gameplay feature, racism. We went into the southern states to dive into this development process. Now, but there are going to be places where if you decide to play a non-human species, you're going to face a lot of challenges. You're going to find a lot of racism in these big cities, especially because there aren't as many playable species. So the population of other creatures is a lot shorter than humans. But aside from that kind of wraps everything up. There are plenty of dungeons throughout, and a lot of things I didn't even go into because, again, spoilers. I want y'all discover things along your own journey. There will be a map, loosely, that you will acquire to kind of, that won't have as many spoilers that I do, that mine does. Obviously, I have everything marked, all that stuff like that. But yeah, that kind of wraps up everything. I'll probably send the map as well with this to kind of help with everything. Of course, it's not exactly the prettiest, just because I did make it back in like 2020. I think I just never did anything with it until now. But yeah, I'll probably post this to YouTube, then just send the link in the chat. A little longer video than I expected, but that wraps up everything that I needed to talk about, that you needed to know moving forward. There is more information, I just didn't dive into it, so I figured y'all didn't really need like a lot of the deep lore, like characters and stuff like that. If you ask questions though, like about characters, or like who's the matriarch, who's the queen of Zacchaeus, like I can send you that stuff privately, or just in the group chat, it doesn't really matter. Or who's the king of Galentine, was Galentine's the fast food structure, I don't know. You can take note of those questions. Besides that,